Welcome to the News in Motion podcast. Over the next several months leading up to the midterm elections, Gail will focus most of her podcasts on equipping and educating voters and encouraging people to register to vote. Gail is also available to serve as a community speaker on voting and civic engagement. If you are interested in working with her, email Gail at newsinmotionwithgail@gmail.com to schedule her today. If you're a candidate and would like to join Gail for a segment or submit your advertisement to be aired for a fee, email newsinmotionwithgail@gmail.com. Now for today's podcast.
Welcome, everyone. This is Gail Dudley, and it is time for the NIM, the News in Motion podcast. This week, I'm so excited that we have a partner who is joining us today, Power the Polls. I'm so excited about this, and I'm hoping that you will tune in. If you are tuning in on the exact day, today is Friday, September the 15th. I think it's the 15th anyway. If not, it could be the 14th. But anyway, y'all know it's Friday. We're so happy to be back after being on break for such a long time. And we're going to be focused on voting leading up to the midterm elections. And I was just notified that it's actually Friday, September the 16th. But anyway, we wanted to really jump in. You all have heard me share many times that having poll workers is essential. I shared with you some incidents during the primaries right here in the state of Ohio, although we reach across the United States and abroad, that there were people who went to a polling location and it was indeed closed due to a lack of poll workers. When the pandemic hit us in 2020, it gave us a reset in some cases, but it was also a setback because older people were the ones who were powering the polls. But due to COVID and because they were concerned, they have dropped off. Now it's time for a new set of individuals to step to that plate. I'm going to say up front, as you will hear from our guest today, that it is an extremely long day, but it's an opportunity to participate in civic engagement. As the Queen would have said, it is our civic duty to do these things. So I'm just excited to talk about this and to jump right in. Today I have Jane Slusser. I hope I said that correctly.
Just about.
What is it? Give it to me.
Jane Slusser.
Slusser. Thank you for
tricky one.
She is the program manager of Power the Polls. Jane oversees all operations of the initiative, from building relationships with election officials in states across the U.S. to developing strategies to recruit new poll workers and fill shortages in key areas. Also to engaging partners across industries. So I'm so excited to have you with me today, Jane, as we share. News in Motion, I'm sure Ashley may have shared this with you. News in Motion, we really got our start in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, actually. I am a lover of politics, and my friends say I always light up, and they come to me for all the news. So I started this digital news broadcast Monday through Thursday live at 7:25 a.m. Eastern on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then I also started the podcast. Well, the podcast initially was dealing with mimosas, which I love a mimosa, but I still wanted to talk politics. So we thought, why not just merge the two, have the show Monday through Thursday, and then on Friday do our audio podcast. And actually, there are so many people downloading and tuning into this podcast that it excites me. And my goal is to always bring them relevant commentary mixed with a call to action. And sometimes I give an inspirational message. But today I really want to hit on that call to action. So welcome, Jane, to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be able to speak with you and to talk about poll workers and how essential they are to running our elections.
I'm excited too. So Power the Polls is a first of its kind nonpartisan initiative for recruiting poll workers to ensure a safe and fair election for all. Now that sounds real good. But can you break that down for me? What exactly is Power the Polls?
Yeah, so I'll take you back to the beginning of how we were founded. So in 2020, similar to News in Motion, we were a group that came together during the pandemic. Basically, after uh, the first few primaries that happened after COVID had hit, we saw that poll workers who in 2020, the average age of a poll worker was over 60. So these were all folks like everybody who were getting the message from their doctors and from public health experts that they should stay home. And so folks were calling into the elections office to say, we can't serve. And that led to some pretty devastating consequences for our elections, where cities that would have hundreds of polling locations were reduced to only having a few dozen. And we had long lines of voters waiting for hours to cast their ballot. And so, looking towards the November election, which we knew would have high turnout, there was a big concern that we wouldn't have enough poll workers to staff elections and provide access for voters to vote in person. So, a group of nonprofit organizations and businesses came together and said, let's do everything that we can to recruit more poll workers so that we can make sure that people can access the polls this November. We originally set out to recruit 250,000 folks, and we had over 700,000 people sign up through our website. So obviously, not every single person went on to become a poll worker. Some people, as you mentioned, saw the hours and said, I can't wake up that early or I can't stay up that late. That was a little bit of a deterrent, but we were able to get a large number of our folks connected to their local elections office so that they could serve as poll workers, and really sort of pass the torch from people who've been serving our elections for decades. And now it's their turn to sit back and relax and let the next generation pick it up. So that's what we helped do in 2020. And we relaunched again this year because election administrators still have sounded the alarm that they need more folks. This is sort of a generational shift happening right now of poll workers, where we want to get younger folks in the door who can serve in this election and serve until they're over the age of 60 and ready to retire out of this gig.
That sounds good to me. You know, it's so interesting. I remember my grandmother. She's now deceased, gone. She would have been 97 this year. She loved being a poll worker.
Yeah.
And I can recall when I was a little girl, she would get dressed up. I mean, her pantyhose, her skirt, her heels, her pearls, her pillbox hat, all of that, her cardigan that was like a pearl button up on her way to the polls to serve as a poll worker. And again, and I keep thinking of the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II. She would be like, "This is my duty." I mean, that was my grandmother, and I think also because she was an African American female, for years she wanted to vote. She had that opportunity. Then she had the opportunity, the invitation to come and serve as a poll worker. She just loved it. She never missed it until she got sick late in life. And she would always tell all of us, there's five of us. I have four siblings. She would always tell us, if you have an opportunity to serve, serve. She talked about poll working, jury duty, make sure you're registered to vote, so forth and so on. So there was a love of that. Do you find, Jane, that today there's a disconnect with the current generation compared to those who are 60 and over who have been serving in that capacity? And if so, what can we do to educate them and motivate them to fulfill these slots?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, one of my favorite things that I get to do working on this project is go through our inbox and read messages that people have sent to us. A lot of times it's just questions about the process, but then we get these wonderful messages about why people signed up, and we hear from people who, like you, that their mom or their grandmother previously did this, and it was a source of pride for them. It was something that they instilled in their kids, and so these folks are, basically reaching an age now where they say, I need to sign up and do that. My mom is aging out of this role. It's time for her to hang up her cap or her pillbox hat, and for me to step in. So we see a lot of folks that are motivated because it's something that people in their family have done. A lot of people that sign up with us sign up through a community organization. So these are people that kind of step in to help out in their neighborhood and their community whenever there is a need, whether it's, the people that are serving food at Thanksgiving in a kitchen, or, doing that neighborhood cleanup, or serving people on election day. These are people that are really passionately interested in serving their communities. And I think the biggest issue for this is because so many people who have been serving as poll workers have done it for so long, that people just don't understand this is something that they need to step up to do. And there's a real lack of awareness around it. And once people know what it is, and know that it's a thing that they can do, they're more than eager to step up and do that. And so a lot of it is just about getting the word out, and also making it easy for people to find the information that they need to sign up to be a poll worker. So right now, if you go to sign up, to try to find your local poll worker application, in some places it's really easy. In some places, it takes a while to actually find where that exact application is. So we created this website, which is supported by the Fair Election Center, which does research of every poll worker application around the country. And you go to our website, you put your name, your zip code, and you get directed to your local jurisdiction's application. Sometimes, as I'm sure you know, when you go to fill out a form online, you don't fill it out immediately. So if you don't, we just bug you until you do, and make sure you get that application in, and then kind of give you some encouragement along the way while you're waiting to hear back from your local elections office. But really, by doing that, it enables us to really share this link broad and wide and let everybody know that they can sign up on Power the Polls. And then folks are able to get connected with their jurisdiction no matter where they live, because it can be really hard to find that otherwise.
I love that. And I'm going to plug this right here because News in Motion has a distinct link.
Yep.
We have powerthepolls.org/news in motion. Again, powerthepolls.org/news in motion. And that link will take you exactly to where Jane was just sharing. I was looking on the website, Jane, also, and it talks about you're already seeing the need for large-scale poll worker recruitment in 2022, because the poll worker shortages have already affected voters this year during the primaries. So if I can ask you this question, I know it won't be the exact number, but currently, how many election poll workers are needed for the November 8th election?
So this is a tricky question because it changes every day in terms of how many folks have been recruited. But basically, it is estimated that to run the elections, the general election across the United States, we need about 1 million poll workers. So you think about every single polling location having enough people at it to be able to serve our voters. It's about 1 million poll workers nationwide. Now, of course, a lot of people come back who've been poll workers before. If once you're a poll worker, you're going to be a poll worker till you retire. So there's a lot of folks that are coming back, but there's a lot of need for new people. So we don't have an exact number of, we need 50,000 more this year. We are really working, and it's different from different jurisdictions, and the sort of gap goes down every single day. We are lucky to be hearing of more jurisdictions telling us that they're full or that they feel really good about their recruitment, but a lot of other areas saying we need more, or we need to have a backup list in case people get sick, or in case something comes up with people as we get closer to election day. So applications are still rolling in everywhere, but we've also been really excited to see that it's something that people are doing and stepping up for. Once they hear that there's a need, they get excited about being the person that can fill it.
Great. So if I can go through a couple of questions, because people have been asking me these questions. I said, I'm going to ask Jane these questions. The first question, what are the requirements for being an election poll worker?
Yeah. So
the age requirements, the ability, whatever. Can you give us the requirements?
Yeah, this is going to be tricky where I say it depends. It gets a little different, Gail. It depends really on every local jurisdiction. So there's state elections and there's local rules around who can be a poll worker. Generally speaking, you need to live and vote where you're going to be a poll worker. In some places, this might be that you need to live in the county or in the city, or sometimes it's even that you need to serve in your exact voting precinct. It really depends on the local rules, but basically, you need to live where you are and you need to be an eligible voter. There are some places where if you aren't a voter yet, for instance, if you're a student and you're under the age of 18, a lot of places have student poll worker programs, which are one of my favorites because it's a really great way to get young people involved. It's also really reliable because, students have to get dropped off and picked up. And so you know that they're going to serve their full day. But it's also a really beautiful way to instill a respect and a love for participating in our democracy for folks who aren't yet able to vote. But
Now, thank you for that. Before you go ahead, before you go on, I'm going to put a pin in it just for a second because you said something that many people have been asking me.
mhm,
I live in the state of Ohio,
yeah,
and I actually live in what you call Delaware County, but the central Ohio area is the Franklin County area. And there are so many poll workers needed in Franklin County. So there's people who live in other counties like myself, like a Delaware County, where we're saying, hey, you keep having this need out here. We'll sign up and come over to Franklin County. And they're saying, nope, can't happen.
yeah,
But we know, well, what we have seen, I won't say we know, what we have seen is that the polling locations that are the first to be closed are in the marginalized areas.
yeah,
And then there's this whole issue of how do we get them to the next polling place? I know in the primary, we had an unusual primary. We had two actually, this one in May and one in August because of the maps, and the maps still aren't defined. And people were showing up at a polling location with the sign on the door saying, sorry, not enough poll workers. We're moving you 2 blocks over. And people were like, well, how do we get there? So fortunately, I knew some people who witnessed this. They were just getting people in cars, taking them over, and then bringing them back to where they were, so they can have their loved ones or whomever pick them up, or they're busing. Or they got on the bus line, the transportation. So my question is, what do we need to do as voters, as constituents, as citizens to say that's not fair? I live 20 minutes away, so why can't I go serve over there? Because I also know poll workers in the same county where they're traveling 30, 40 minutes to go serve because there's no more openings in their community. Isn't that the same difference, Jane? I know I'm asking you a whole lot, but I just want to
yeah.
hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, yeah. So this is something where it really does come down to what those state laws are and sometimes what the local laws are. So there are some states where folks are able to serve outside of their county, and some where people really need to be within that county, or like I said, sometimes it's you need to live in the precinct where you're going to serve, and it really does depend on those local laws. One reason why we exist is we want to make sure in every single place that there is a person local to that jurisdiction that's able to step up, so that we don't have to, worry about people coming in from the neighboring county. But that's something where I would encourage folks always to reach out to their local election administrator, or if they're interested in the neighboring county where they know there's need, reaching out to them just to see what the rules are in your area, because it really does vary from state to state, and sometimes it varies from county to county.
Okay, thank you. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but you said that. I was like, I have to ask her this question.
Yep. And I mean, that's one of the real reasons why we see this as being so important, is because we want to make sure that there are people to staff each of these locations, because like you laid out what happens if poll workers don't show up. That means an entire location shuts down, and that means the difference between, like, if you're making a plan to go to work and vote on your way to work, and you go and the polling location's not open, it's not open at all, or it's not open on time, you've just missed your opportunity to vote. And you're not going to be able to come back after work because you work the late shift. So
Right.
it's something that's really important. And that's why we try to make sure that we have more than enough people in every area, so that administrators have backup list, and have lots of folks who are committed to opening those polling locations and operating them.
Thank you. Thank you. So keep going with the requirements.
Yeah. I was going to say the requirements vary from state, place to place. The next thing that varies from place to place is the pay. Usually like some places you might be making $100 a day. Some places you might be making a little bit more than that. One thing that we saw in 2020 is a lot of the daily rates for poll workers went up because administrators were trying to entice more folks in to become poll workers. So pay varies from place to place. Training varies from place to place. In a lot of places, you actually get paid for your training as well as the day that you work because you go through a pretty rigorous training process. So they'll compensate you for your time. And
Is
then
that money taxed? Do you know?
what?
Is that money taxed? Do you
Is
know?
it comes in basically like you are an employee because you are an employee of
Okay.
the local elections office. We've heard people say, "I don't want to get paid. I want to do this just to be a good citizen," which is wonderful. It's hard for the administrators sometimes not to pay you, but we've also heard from other people who actually just take that money that they earned being a poll worker and give it away to charity. If you don't want to get paid, you probably still will, but you can think about sending that somewhere else in your community if you want to.
That's cool. Now, you also mentioned training.
Mhm.
You may get paid for training. Now, I hate to bring this up. This is nonpartisan, so I'm going to say this as carefully as possible. What we've been seeing in the news is, let's take Michigan for an example.
Mhm.
There were some individual people who were recorded on on a webinar training the poll workers, and it turned out to be something that really wasn't nice. So
Yep.
if I was to sign up, or if somebody's to sign up and they're going through training and they experience something like that, is there a hotline or something that someone can call? Should they raise questions during that training? Should they remain quiet and never say anything? Do you have any type of standards or policies through Power the Polls with
Yeah.
any type of incidents like that?
So one thing you always want to be real what we want to make a clear distinction around is trainings that people are giving around poll watchers, which are very different than poll workers. So poll workers, sometimes they're called election judges, sometimes they're called election workers. These are people that work directly for the city or the state or the county as local election local election workers. All of that training comes through your local jurisdiction. And so if you're in your local jurisdiction, you're not going to hear that type of stuff. You're going to get things from your local elections officials. That's all official training about things like how machines work, how you check in voters, how to deal with issues if, say, a machine breaks down or a long line forms. So that's all of the sort of official training. Anything else that's besides that, that's not your local elections official. So that type of stuff shouldn't be happening in your local elections office. We haven't heard any reports in local elections offices of that. I think some of those other reports have been from outside sources that are not the local elections office. So if you're in your local elections office, you shouldn't see that type of activity. And we know that local elections offices are on the lookout for people who are, being told to sort of not play by the rules, and they have good ways of weeding them out, especially during that training process of
Great.
understanding people are asking very weird questions and are clearly motivated by the wrong reasons.
Okay, thank you for answering that. There was, several people on News in Motion who were in the chat asking that, like, how do they work around that, and do they have a duty to report that if that ever comes up? So, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
And that's one good thing we come up with a list of questions that we suggest for people to think about in their training so that they can make sure they get the answers to some common scenarios. And one of those is understanding the difference between a poll worker and a poll watcher, and what rules those apply to a poll watcher. Because campaigns and political parties do, have the right in most places to have staff monitoring the election, but they also have very strict rules around the etiquette and rules by which they must abide by to be in those polling locations. And we encourage people to ask those questions along with lots of other things like what to do if there's a long line or what to do if a machine breaks and you don't know how to process folks in the line.
Okay, now does a person need to have a technology background at all to become an election poll worker?
No, you do not. So we have heard from a lot of administrators that they are looking for folks who are tech savvy. which when we dig a little deeper, oftentimes that just means somebody who knows how to operate a computer or a touch screen. So if you have a smartphone, you're probably pretty tech savvy because you spend a lot of time on that phone. And these are things that are really helpful for administrators because the machines that we vote on look a little different. The poll book isn't an old binder anymore. Sometimes it's an electronic poll book. And so they really want to have people with those type of skill sets to make sure that they can help those voters through their process.
Yeah, I know. I do my signature where I vote on an iPad, and my signature never looks the same. And they're
Yeah.
like, try it again. I'm like, look, I don't know
Yeah.
what else you want me to do.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we talked about them being paid positions. We talked about the requirements. Now, are there basic responsibilities? Like, do they have to open up? Do they have to move the voting booths out into the room? Do they have to bring coffee or whatever? Are there basic responsibilities? Do they have to be able to lift 30 pounds? I'm just hypothetically putting
Yeah.
things out here.
There are lots of different roles for folks in a polling location. Most polling locations have, depending on the size, sometimes they're serving multiple neighborhoods or something. So those you could have you could have a dozen poll workers in one place. If it's just sort of single place, it could only be 5 folks. But there's a team there that's with you. So normally you'll have folks doing things like check-in. You'll have folks that maybe do more of the voter assistance. If it's a big polling location, you might have folks needed there to direct people to different areas, to make sure that they're in the right place to find their right voting location. There's lots of different things folks can do. Generally, the biggest problem is that most people do need to work the entire day, which can be intimidating for people because you need to get there early and you need to stay till the end of the day. And so that sort of length of that day can really put people off. What we've heard from people that serve as poll workers is that the day goes by very quickly. They thought that they were going to fall asleep if they were up that long, but they were filled with the adrenaline of the morning rush of voters. They get a little bit of a break in the middle of the day to have a snack. And then they have that, evening rush of people coming in to try to get their votes cast before the polls close. And so people have a really great time. It is something where if you're intimidated when you're looking at the application because it says that you might need to be able to lift 25 pounds and you can't do that, you should still fill out that application and reach out to the administrator because there's probably a role for you that doesn't require you to be a heavy lifter.
Now, would you say it's a 12-hour day or a 14-hour day?
Sometimes it's longer than that. So, sometimes folks need to show up as early as, 5 or 6 a.m. to be able to open up a site on time and stay until, 9 o'clock when you know that everything has been shut down. So it can be a very long day. The good news is it's one day.
Right.
Yeah. Other folks can also do early voting, which can be a shorter day, but sometimes requires you to be able to commit to, a certain number of days throughout the early voting period, which can be tricky for other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, this is good. This is good. I really do appreciate you are answering all the questions, even without me asking some of them. Also on your website, it says providing accurate poll worker information. And it goes on to say, power the polls rely on objective data about poll worker requirements and applications collected from over 5,000 jurisdictions assembled by a nonpartisan fair election center. Can you speak to that? Like that to me, all of a sudden that brings in some legal jargon, if you will.
So
Can you speak to that?
basically what we're saying there is we are not we don't run your elections. We just connect you to the people that do. And so we just send you over, like I mentioned, when you sign up, you go straight through to a page on our website that says, okay, you've given me your zip code. You live in Miami-Dade County, Florida. Here's your application to apply there. And here's the contact information for their office. So it's really just that we are sort of an encyclopedia of poll worker applications that you can look up, and we send you right over to the right place to go to.
I love that. Thank you. When's the last day to complete an application to be able to be a poll worker for November the 8th, 2022, midterm.
If you are thinking about being a poll worker this year, I would get off this podcast right now. Go to your computer, type in powerthepolls.org and sign yourself up. We have heard from administrators that they're starting to select people as poll workers much earlier this year. So they may not have a deadline until later this month. Some have already passed. So just don't waste your time. Get your application in early. It helps them know that you're interested. It gives you time to get trained and get placed and know that you're going to be doing this so that you can prepare for one of the best days of your life, serving as a poll worker this election.
And does it matter the person's party affiliation? And what type of clothing should they wear? Or do they have the same rules that once you are so many feet from the polling locations, you have to rid yourself of all the paraphernalia?
So that the first question, party affiliation, in some places they try to have, or they legally have to have a split between two political parties. So they might have 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, or if there's a different sort of party split in that area. So you might get asked about your political affiliation, and that's why they're asking, because they like to have balance at the polls, which we can all imagine why that's really important. And then in terms of what you want to wear, you probably want to wear simple and plain clothing. You wouldn't feel comfortable going to vote if somebody was wearing the T-shirt of, the party you didn't agree with. You should think about that when you get dressed. We tell people try not to, have anything that shows a political affiliation, because that doesn't make people feel confident in their vote. You can wear other things, probably like sports teams and things like that. But we tell people generally try to sort of dress like plain, because you don't want people feeling uncomfortable if they think you're dressed like somebody different than them. So we tell folks to, this is a nonpartisan activity. You want to make sure that every political party, no matter if it's yours or someone else's, feels welcome, and that you make sure that their vote gets cast no matter who they're voting for.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. One more question before I wrap up and ask you for all the contact information. Again, if you all are considering, you can go to powerthepolls.org. And if you, News in Motion does have a distinct link. It's /News in Motion. And all that information will be in the description here. Again, that's powerthepolls.org /News in Motion. So one other question, this is going to be a heavy question, but I have to ask. With people still focused on January 6th, 2021, and the chatter that people are hearing about what could possibly happen November the 8th, November 8th, are there any protections in place for poll workers if anything like that was to happen?
Yeah, so we have heard from administrators that they are very concerned about, or they are very prepared to address any concerns that poll workers might have around their own personal safety. One thing that a lot of folks sort of like to point out is, unfortunately, different types of voter intimidation are not new to American society.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, election administrators sometimes have some history of knowing how to deal with this type of intimidation, which means that they are prepared to make sure that both voters and the people who allow people to vote, our poll workers, are able to do that safely and securely. So there's a lot of work that they do to make sure that people, have very clear guidelines around their own safety. We've seen some legislation passed in different areas that specifically protects poll workers. But I think the most important thing for folks to focus on here is, the more poll workers that are in a location, people are going to come in with their preconceptions. And when they see, oh, these are just people from my community that I see at the grocery store that I know live in my neighborhood, that's going to be, the type of thing that creates a really positive atmosphere inside of a polling location. We hear from everybody that has signed up to be a poll worker, that they have a great day and that it was it was unexpected how much joy they would experience working those polls and how fulfilled they would feel afterwards. And so there's a lot of sort of gloom and doom and bad news to read anywhere. But this is a really great way to be part of the solution to that, and to have like a really, really exciting day being able to serve folks. And that's the sort of overwhelming response that we've gotten from people. Kind of worried about things before they went in and did it, had a great day, were able to help everybody in their neighborhood vote safely and securely, and are ready to come back and do it again every year after that.
I love that. And I'm excited about it. So listen, hopefully you all are taking notes. This podcast is going to be available forever. So even if you want to jump in next year and say, well, I'm going to prepare for the following elections, this podcast is not going anywhere. So it's going to be up there so you can jump on, and you can always follow powerthepolls.org. Jane, thank you so much. Again, y'all, Jane is the program manager of Power the Polls. She oversees all operations of the initiative, from building relationships with the election officials in states across the U.S. to developing strategies to recruit new poll workers and fill shortages in key regions, also to engaging partners across the industries. I am so grateful you were able to join me today for this podcast. And listen, don't think about it, people. We need you. We need you as a poll worker. So don't delay. You can go to powerthepolls.org, and that's power, POWER, the THE polls, POLLS.org/news in motion, and start that application. We want to hear from you. And we would love to see you serving your area, your community, your neighborhood, in your school or your church or your faith community or parachurch ministry, wherever there's a polling location. We would love to walk in and see your smiling face. Yes, it's a long day, but we also believe you're going to have great joy. So, Jane, what are your parting words along with all your contact information? Like if we can follow you on social media.
You can follow us at Power the Polls, and we're at powerthepolls.org. And I would just say you should get ready to sign up today and have a fantastic time. Thank you so much for being a poll worker. Look forward to seeing you at the polls.
Yes, thank you. And everyone, y'all know what I say when we're talking about mimosas. We're coming up to that holiday mimosa, and y'all know I love that cranberry mimosa. I'll be bringing you more recipes when we get to October. Right now, just go to Starbucks and grab you a pumpkin latte or pumpkin something. It is amazing. Y'all, earlier this morning, I had the caramel apple spice. It is amazing. It is delightful. It is that season. I love this 60 degrees outside in the state of Ohio where I reside. So let me know what you're drinking these days. Keep it clean when you email me. You can email me at info.gaildudley@gmail.com, or you can email newsinmotionwithgail@gmail.com. And y'all know where you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It is at Gail Dudley. That's GAIL, D as in David, U, D as in David, LEY. And my website, www.gaildudley.com. Hope to hear from you soon. And don't forget, Monday through Thursday at 7:25 a.m. Eastern Time, you can catch us live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We want you to become a poll worker. Don't think about it. Just go do it. It will brighten your day. I promise you. All right. Let me know if you signed up. We're out.